Hi, I want to talk to you about the literary critical essay. You have to write a literary critical essay for any literature class. Teachers will tell you different things about what they want for the literary critical essay or for other types of literary essays. This is specific to this course. Here is what a literary critical essay is not. It is not a bibliography. You will not write the bibliography of the author of the work. It is not a book report. You are not telling me what happens in the story. A good literary essay will start the introduction with a brief summary of the work, maybe, but never, ever should the entire essay focus on just the plot of the story. You're not writing a synopsis, you're writing an analysis. It is not a sermon. It's easy to look at literature and apply biblical truth or even learn a biblical truth. And there's a case and certainly a time for writing a biblical perspective found in literature. This paper, this kind of paper, is not that time. The reason is that what this paper is a literary critical analysis that analyzes a character, theme, symbol, motif, or other literary element in the work to draw deeper meaning, understanding, and relevance of the work itself. The nature of the essay is argumentative. That is why it can't be a book report, because a book report just tells you what it is. It's just the story. If it's argumentative, you have to make an opinion about that work that someone else may not have. Somebody else may disagree with you. That is the nature of argumentative. You will prove your thesis using lines from the work and by citing scholarly sources on the work. So you will have to research a little bit and see what other people are saying about the work. You do want to find at least one person who agrees with you and at least one person who disagrees with you so that you can give the full gamut and address the other person's point of view. The weekly discussions and tests that you do in this course are sort of mini critical essays. If you think about it, your discussions should start with a topic sentence as kind of the thesis of your discussion. You state a claim about the work in question. For example, you might have said, in Verses Upon the Burning of Our House, Anne Bradstreet went against the Puritan stereotypes by lamenting the loss of her material possessions. And then you proved how that went against the Puritan stereotypes. So for the critical essay, you're just taking that same idea that's been condensed into kind of an espresso shot each week for your discussions and making it a full pot of coffee, so to speak. It's going to be longer. It's not a super long paper. Longer. It's going to be deeper, richer, and overall there will just be more to it. Your thesis should make an argument about the work. Remember, the nature of the essay is that it is argumentative. Here are some examples of good thesis statements. Dickens uses his characters in Oliver Twist to undermine Victorian stereotypes and assumptions of poverty. Here's another good thesis. In Charlotte's Web, the eponymous spider reveals that literacy can literally save a life. Though Captain Hook is his arch nemesis, Peter Pan's true enemy is himself. These are all good thesis statements because they're debatable. Do Dickens' characters actually undermine Victorian stereotypes? In some ways they do, and I could prove that in a paper, but in other ways he kind of plays into stereotypes. Does he do that on purpose, or is he falling into the same trap? Different papers could take different approaches. Charlotte's Web, the eponymous means the title character, so Charlotte the spider, reveals that literacy can literally save a life. Well, I could take a different opinion and say that Wilbur saved his own life by simply being delightful. Maybe Fern's love saved him. It saved him once, and the people's love for him kind of saved him in the end. So I could take different points of view and argue make different thesis statements. And the same is true for the last one. Here are some examples of bad thesis statements. Oliver Twist is about an orphan who escapes the evil hands of men who profit from those in poverty. That sounds like a fancy thesis, but you're not arguing anything. You're just stating the plot of the book. Oliver Twist is an orphan, and he does escape the evil hands of people who profit from poverty. There's no argument there. E.B. White's dedication to language shines in Charlotte's Web. Again, there's no argument. We know that E.B. White was dedicated to language. He wrote a book on style. So there's no argument here. And of course it shines in Charlotte's Web. It shines in all of his books. Captain Hook ignores God's command to protect and provide for children. Well, Peter Pan doesn't expressly talk about the Bible. It's fiction and it's fantasy. So to suddenly try to make a sermon out of it is not going to work. You're not actually analyzing the literature based on what the literature has to say. There is a place, as I said before, in which you can analyze literature using the Bible, but this kind of paper particularly is not that place. So do not use a thesis that tries to apply the Bible to the literature. You will see, especially in American Lit, where we read The Old Man and the Sea, that characters can be a Christ type, and you could prove or argue that the old man is a Christ type based on certain elements. That is not the same as trying to make a sermon. That kind of typology, the Christology that appears in literature is a known literary element, and that is appropriate for literature. The sermonizing is not. If you're confused about that, just send me an email and we can talk through it and make sure that you have a firm foundation on that. After you have a thesis, you draft an outline. See the research paper guidelines in the syllabus tab. You will follow Turabian, and you will have all the format, the complete sentences, and so forth that you did for the research paper if you took Comp 2. If you didn't take Comp 2 at this college, go through and read those research paper guidelines in the syllabus tab so that you can acquaint yourself with Turabian. It's an excellent resource, and it's there to be a help to you so that you don't have to read all of Turabian before you do this paper. It just condenses what you actually need. In your outline, each main point, the Roman numerals, should prove the thesis. Each subpoint, the numerals, let's just say letters, should offer the logic, evidence from the literature, and research that supports the main point above it. Use complete sentences and repeat keywords. Here are some examples of good main points. Oliver Twist undermines Victorian stereotypes and assumptions of poverty because he is an orphan who doesn't want to live a life of theft. You can see how, if you remember the thesis from before, this repeats keywords by repeating Oliver Twist, undermining Victorian stereotypes and assumptions of poverty, and then offers a reason. Now I'm supporting my thesis because he's an orphan who doesn't want to live a life of theft. Next, Nancy undermines Victorian stereotypes and assumptions of poverty because she's a prostitute who helps Oliver escape the evil Sykes. So here you can see the repetition, and I used a transition word, next, which is appropriate. And then I stated that reason, why, because, so forth. Here are some examples of bad main points. There was a lot of poverty in the Victorian era. Well, if your thesis is that Dickens undermined Victorian stereotypes and assumptions of poverty through his characters, this main point does not immediately begin to prove that thesis. You went off on a rabbit trail to say there was a lot of poverty in the Victorian era. Well, that doesn't say anything about the literature. We have to prove the literature. There's another bad main point. The characters show how hard it was to live. They do reveal that in the story, but that doesn't support your thesis. Your thesis is that Dickens' characters were undermining Victorian stereotypes and assumptions of poverty. So every main point has to prove that specific thesis. Background of Oliver Twist. Do never give background of whatever topic on an outline. Only in the most extensive and rigorous of doctoral thesis manuscripts would you ever have to do the background of something. One, this is a fragment. Two, you have to start proving your thesis. Assume that your audience has already read the book, Oliver Twist, or at least knows the story or watched the movie. Do not give the background of it. The Bible says to take care of the poor, fatherless, and widows. Again, this is sermonizing. The Bible does say that, and it's a very good point, but this is not the place for it. These are the main things that you need to know for your literary critical essay. There will be more specifics given to you in the course, so make sure you read the syllabus and make sure you read the rest of the lesson material to make sure that you know everything that is required for you for this paper. If you have any questions, as always, send an email.